Thank you again for being a part of the Travel Again Policy Advisor video series. We're having these briefings as a part of an effort to gain insight from our expert advisors about their views on rebuilding traveler confidence. So our guest today is Mike Koetting from SAP Concur, a longtime industry veteran and certainly a terrific leader in the space, and somebody we're glad to have on our team helping to think through all of this and plot a good course for the future. Welcome, Mike.
Glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
I'll start off. I mean, you have a unique perspective because of SAP's role. You really, deal with really all parts of the industry in varying capacities. Give me from your perspective, how are you looking at this? How is SAP looking at all this in the environment we're in?
So the pandemic obviously has had a dramatic impact on the SAP Concur business, particularly the Concur travel online booking tool side of the business. So I think, the results that we've seen are similar to those that you would expect from other similar industry participants. A very dramatic drop off, really starting early Q2. We were starting to see some recovery in late Q3. I think that we've seen, a bit of a second surge, and that's really kind of put a pause on the recovery. Interestingly, although Concur travel online bookings have been dramatically impacted, we've seen a bit more stability in our expense reporting business and invoice management business. Just as employees have shifted to working from home, they're continuing to incur, some of those expenses, perhaps new expenses associated with that different working environment. So, some parts of our business have been, more resilient, I'd say. But in general, we're optimistic, although I think conservative about the pace of a recovery. So we do think that we'll start to see things improve, particularly in the latter half of 2021.
So when you look at the issue of traveler confidence, what things do you think are most important? What stands out for you and where you're looking at it all?
So in terms of restoring traveler confidence, I think some of the most important priorities are how the industry collectively communicates, and the transparency with which the industry communicates, both in terms of steps that are being taken to ensure traveler safety, and one of I think the challenges is to the degree that that message isn't consistent, it can be confusing for travelers. And I don't know that the different suppliers are necessarily viewing their safety measures as sort of a potential competitive advantage. I can understand them taking that approach, but to the degree that the industry can speak consistently about how we are all collectively working to restore safe, responsible travel, I think that helps travelers gain more faith in the system. But interestingly, I think what we'll see is the travel system is again going to need to restore its trust in travelers, right? So you see, different suppliers, different geographies requiring either, testing before and after travel, potentially evidence of vaccinations. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and that trust dynamic sort of works two ways.
That's a great point, because I think a lot gets said about, clearly we know we have to, as an industry, come back and coalesce around, very clear messaging and, a clear point of view about what it takes. Certainly the industry is going through every step imaginable in terms of the, how they're preparing the product to make it as safe as possible for people to come back. That's all great. But there is a responsibility for the traveler, and we also need to be clear about what that is. And to your point, it is a two-way street. It absolutely is. If travelers don't buy into, consistently being a good global citizen and being a good participant in the process, it won't work. It'll break down there. But I think a lot of that, I think if we are very clear about what we expect as an industry and what we need for the traveler to do, I mean, we've proven it out in different cycles in the past, and certainly dealing with terrorism, dealing with other industry issues. We
Right.
certainly travelers will adapt, and I think and make it because they want to travel.
Right. And I think you bring up a very good example of sort of a similar situation where the expectations with regard to traveler security and vetting of travelers, like, we saw a big change in that dynamic, after 9/11. I think, the industry reached a point where travelers know what's expected, the industry knows what's expected, and that was effective.
Yeah. So you came on this travel again as an advisor, policy advisor. You've been a really great contributor to that process. What made you want to join us and do that?
Well, I think just the scale of the challenge to the industry is one that requires a robust response. It requires collaboration from a lot of industry players. And I say that not just because the impact of COVID is purely an economic impact on the industry. That of course is significant, but I genuinely believe, travel, both business travel and leisure travel, is a positive force for good in the world. And so, the sooner that we as industry leaders, and of course Concur would fall in that category, can collaborate with our peers to help restore travel, I think it's just so important, not just for the economic implications, but really travel is a force for good, and we need to make sure it's restored safely and responsibly as quickly as possible.
That's great. Well, and then final question, something I have to ask, like, where were you when the curtain came down and it was clear we had a major pandemic on our hands? Like, what trip? Everyone has a last trip that they were on.
Right.
Where were you? What was it?
That's so interesting because we were about, I would say, 2 weeks away from launching SAP Concur's annual sort of client gathering that we call
Right.
Fusion. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That was scheduled, I think, for late March in Orlando.
Yep.
And at that time, organizations were starting to, reel back and cancel those events. We made the decision to be, very conservative. We canceled that event. Several of us went ahead and traveled to Orlando because we had all the AV set up,
That's right. Yeah.
and we went ahead and presented there. So that was my last business trip. Since then, yeah, I've taken only 2 flights, and that was to see family, and that was when there's sort of a lull. We kind of thought we were making progress on the curve this summer. Since then, we've canceled any gatherings for Thanksgiving
Yeah.
or Christmas, but we've done a lot of sort of driving here and there, sort of travel, weekend excursions, and I think that's pretty common actually.
Well, it helps keep you sane in the process, right? A little bit, even if you can't do the big things you would normally do or want to do, it does help, right? Got to get out a little bit and still safely experience what you can. And then, again, hopefully with the work we're doing, the recommendations we're making, if we can get some real traction, I think we can start to safely open up again and help to bring travel back. And it's there. We just have to work together to get there.
That would be my hope. I have to admit, like, I'm ending this year and my wife has more frequent flyer miles than I do, which is just crushing me that she gets bragging rights for more frequent flyer miles in 2020. So I am looking to reverse that trend as quickly as possible.
Well, good thought for the new year, and thanks for your leadership and support. And let's see what we can do to get a recovery moving in 2021.
Yeah, and Michael, thanks to you as well. Like, I really think the initiative to start, the Travel Again group and advocate for, the measures to recover and bring travel back is just critically important. So thanks to you as well.
No, thank you. All right, take care and happy New Year.
Take care.